I'm Michael Bitar, and this is Cracking the Code. Today we've got Bert Miller in the house. Bert, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you, bud.
Absolutely.
So Bert and I are going to attack the topic of consumer packaged goods trends that are going on right now. And I'm really excited about this because over the last 60 days, Bert and I have had the pleasure of being in multiple markets. Also, Expo West has recently happened and we were able to attend that. So in the last 60 days, we've talked to about 25 CEOs, intimate conversations. And there have been some themes that we've really seen in the marketplace in these conversations with the CEOs. And so, Bert, let's talk about what trends we're really seeing as these CEOs have been talking about their business and what's on their mind.
Well, I think when you take a look, Michael, the last 16 to 18 months, I think our clients and many of the CEOs are facing some of the same headwinds that we've all faced in some regard. And so it's just been a really common question, how's business? And how are people making decisions as they're looking at their organizations? And it's the same thing that we see. And what we've been sharing with clients, everything from market dynamics and market trends and what's going on in the jobs market, inflation, and so forth and so on. So we got really specific around that. I'm happy to go deeper if you'd like.
No, I would like, because I think even though we're talking about consumer packaged goods and we're talking about high-level executives, mainly CEOs, their businesses are different, but their questions are the same. So yeah, please dive into some of those components.
Yeah, well, the reality is this. You have a lot of businesses who are on a growth trajectory. They have the strategy planning in place, and as they build their 24-month, 36-month, 48-month plans, the dynamics for the last year and a half are this. I mean, certainly we have a couple of wars that are going on. Yeah. Possible escalation of a regional war, hopefully not. You got Russia, China, Iran kind of teaming up. You have our own geopolitics that we have here in the U.S. Number one, the debate of funding some of the wars and providing allocation to countries to continue to support and protect themselves, as well as we have an election ramping up for this November. Yeah. That we perhaps like we've never seen before, and the consumption behaviors are changing amongst not only generations but amongst the overall consumers, and the food spending has certainly declined over that period of time. Then you have, we're talking with Peter Mondavi, and one of the things that has impacted the wine industry is the under $15 sector, is that certainly that the behavior of consuming alcohol has changed. That's number one, and two, what they're drinking has changed too, low alc to no alc. So those are just some of the pieces that have impacted clients as they're sitting back and taking a look. And when I think of that, the CEOs in the boardroom, they're making decisions or not making decisions, candidly, over that period of time. And then you have all the U.S. economic performance issues that we can dive into. But I'll end with this. I think as we look what has impacted those strategy plans, and I'm kind of sitting on the sidelines for a period of time, I think over the last 16, 18 months, now we're here today and where we are. And conversations we've had with those 20, 25 people are this. They are sitting there going, okay, we got to continue to grow our businesses. We can't continue to sit on the sideline. We have to take a look at our strategy plans and how to move them forward. And the chaos that we're currently living in is kind of normalized itself. So how do we take those next steps forward?
No, I like your last comment, right? The chaos that we're living in is normalized. So what does that mean, Bert, for organizations to take action in this environment? You just laid it out really, really well from a global, and there's some other U.S. dynamics that we'll dive into here in a second. But what does taking action look like for these companies? What are they doing, and what should they be doing?
Well, I think what they are doing is they're evaluating how they want to take the steps forward, and they're using insights, and the insights they're taking a hard look is, look, we have almost 9 million open jobs. We have about 6 million people that are currently participants that are not working. You have consumer spending at an all-time high. The revolving credit is massive, and the consumer spending is happening at a rate where corporate growth is almost 4%. And so when you have those kind of numbers impacting the marketplace, they kind of contradict to what's been happening over the last 18 months. And so it's been confusing for the boardrooms and the CEOs as to what steps they're going to take forward. And the dynamics there are, we have low unemployment at 3.8 still. So the need for talent is escalating, and I think with the steps that they've taken at this point, and the ones we're dealing with, including some significant project work and growth of some of the folks that we're talking to, that they have on their plan, is the fact they're ready to move forward, and they're ready to move forward, and we've been seeing that a bit. We started seeing that toward the end of 23, and it's strategic, targeted hiring, and now they're starting to ramp up and go for the continued growth and bringing their plans back into play.
Yeah, no, I think that's outstanding. And talk about being on the sidelines. So, and they're tired of being on the sidelines. They don't want to be on the sidelines. They want to drive and move forward. What other advice do you have for consumer goods organizations, not just the C-suite, but decision makers inside of consumer goods organizations, based on what you just mentioned and based on the interactions that we've had over the last 2 months?
Well, I think prudency is important. Being responsible. But I think what we've seen over years and years, if you go, and like I've said, you've heard me say this before, Michael, if you go back to 01, you go back to 08, 09, that period of time, and then even during coming out of COVID, when you asked many of the CEOs and people that have influence, meaning the board, what they would have done differently, they said, well, what we'd have done differently, now that we've kind of moved through that, we would have not put our plans on the shelf. We would have strategically hired in a very responsible manner, perhaps not the manner in which we were going. And the question I always ask myself, if that was your answer, then why is your answer different today? Why is your answer different today? So my advice is be responsible. Certainly look at your balance sheet, look at your plans, but you still have to take a step back and look at your strategy and your objectives and figure out how you're going to move that forward in today's environment, because there's no better time to make up ground on your competition than when they're sitting on the sidelines.
No, I think that's an amazing point. And in all three of those time periods, right, the hindsight 2020 comments were the same. You just mentioned that. I think that's all telling. When you're in the middle of it, you don't know the timing. You don't have a crystal ball, so it locks some people, some organizations up. Mm-hmm. Very few are able to take those actions that you just mentioned in that environment and know what the right timing is to do with it. But let's take the hiring component for just a second. Obviously, it's the business that we're in. But what we heard in the marketplace as well is people. People are critical to all organizations at all times. But the other thing that we heard a lot about was the leadership gap that the CEOs are seeing in the marketplace. When I say leadership gap, I'm talking about the gap in talent that has leadership skills. You want to expound on that, Bert?
Yeah, actually, this is a good topic because it's a crisis. I mean, literally, leadership in corporate America is a crisis at a large proportion. And I say that for a couple of reasons and why it exists. Number one, leadership is not just at the executive level. It's not just at C-suite and the board level. I mean, you can be a leader regardless of what role you're in an organization. And clearly, when you heard us have the conversations with a couple of CEOs in particular, companies can implement their strategy plans and they can be good at what they do and still have a strong company and be profitable and all that. The companies that take advantage of the opportunity they have today and build leadership within their organization, layers of leadership within their organization, those are the companies that are going to make exponential gains. And if you can really help, if we could help a couple CEOs out there crystallize that in their own mind, it might help make the decisions where they might be sitting on the fence. And the second piece of the leadership crisis, I believe, is the lack of upskilling. You heard us talk about that even during COVID. Mm-hmm. And it started prior to COVID, only has escalated. That's been driven by technology, various types of technology, including AI to some extent. But but really technology gains have, and various ways of how businesses are created and brands are brought to market, it's created gaps in the marketplace, of skill gaps in the marketplace. And so that lack of upskilling has had companies promote people into roles beyond where they're currently ready to take on those roles. And what you inevitably happen is if you've not done a good job building leadership at layers in your organization, then you're promoting people really past where they're currently ready, and there you're creating some cracks and gaps in your organization.
No, I think that's great how you tied both of those, the layering and the upscaling, together, Bert, and I think it makes a ton of sense. And my next question really is tied to what you just said, but I think it's a little bit different, is that, we've got these traditional hierarchies inside of organizations. We're in consumer goods, but this applies to any organization, really. So you have these hierarchies and you have these roles. Some of them are independent contributors, some of them are parts of teams. And as the individual continues to perform, he or she gains more responsibility and promotions and raises and compensation. And with these promotions, you start to lead or manage, right, people and or bigger teams. So not just a person or two, but now larger groups of people. And what we've seen in certain cases is people get over promoted or promoted into roles that they're just not functionally ready for. What's your advice for companies, organizations, to avoid that over promoting component while still giving people the opportunities that they need to grow their careers?
Yeah, so using your term over promoting, I think over promoting has a lot of context to it. And what I mean by that is people get promoted that they may not, they're certainly willing, but they may not be able.
Yeah.
I mean, they go beyond their capability and get put into roles, and they are able to get into those roles for a couple of reasons. One, they perform really well at their current role, so therefore they get promoted. That's kind of the way it works. Not to say that that's the way it should work. Probably shouldn't work that way, but that is the way it works. And then the other component is they just don't have the capability to grow into that role. So there's that context. And you have other people that have the capability, they have the skill set and attributes, but they're not yet ready. And the reason that is, it goes back to the point I just made. If as an organization, if you're not building leadership layers in your organization, then you're going to end up having gaps. And the way you do that is through communication. What's the clear North Star? What are the objectives to get there? What are the individual skills that are needed by your identified high potential leaders that are going to be in play? What individual programs have you put together for them for when they are ready? And that part of communication is that methodology and mindset cascading through your organization consistently. And if it's not, then you're certainly setting yourself up to have a gap or two.
No, thank you. Those are great points. So we talked to a lot of people in a 2-month window. Anything else that stands out to you that we haven't covered?
Yeah, it does. I mean, people are innovators. The last 2 months have been really, really incredible. And it's gone from some of our large clients that are what's called legacy companies that have had incredible histories, all the way to some of the innovators that we saw, whether it be in automation, robotics, in the consumer world. They're all looking to figure out how they're going to grow their organization and put their plans into place. And the leaders in the marketplace, they're dealing with a conundrum. As I mentioned earlier, you're dealing with inflation, you're dealing with low unemployment, you're dealing with high interest rates. You got the mortgage rates at just under 8%. You have all these components, that circle of components that are happening in the marketplace, plus the geopolitical issue. So all the things we talked about, all those things are happening at the moment. And yet you have clients, we have our clients that are looking to grow their businesses. And I don't care if you're a startup that has this incredible contract and you're raising $15 million to launch it, or whether you're a big legacy company that is worth $5 billion. Same issues apply across the board.
No, that's great. I found it really exciting to be out there talking to these CEOs. Again, some of them are really innovators and at that really early stage. Some of them are legacy and very large organizations and everything in between. And, you know, the consistent components are they are trying to figure out how to grow, trying to figure out how to do it efficiently. People always come up in every single conversation. Doesn't matter the economic times, doesn't matter the size of the business. So those things are out there consistently. I think you've brought up a number of global dynamics that are going on that are unique to the time right now. You brought up some U.S. economic components that are really important. So I guess from a recap perspective, our last 2 months have been amazing. We've been out in the marketplace, spending time with some amazing individuals. Thank you, everybody that spent time with us to welcome us into your organizations and get a feel for your culture and really listen to what's going on in your business. And Bert, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your insights and your perspective.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it.